You're watching Inside the Right. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, longtime Republican operative Tim Miller, to give us a better understanding, a better look of what's happening on the right. So, Tim, a closer than expected race out of New Hampshire as Trump edges out Nikki Haley by about 10 points, at least at the time that we're recording this. Biggest question here, do you believe that Haley drops out before the primary next month in South Carolina? Because if she doesn't, then we have a full month of Trump continuing to waste resources in the Republican primary, which I'd imagine is the best case scenario for Joe Biden.
Yeah, edges out is a little kind. I mean, a 10-point victory in a lot of scenarios is not an edge out. I think that Nikki was hoping to be closer into the single
Yeah.
digits in a best case scenario. I don't think a win was really possible. Um, whether or not she stays is really kind of a psychological question about Nikki Haley. I'm here kind of to analyze the right, but I can't, put Nikki Haley on a couch personally. I
Yeah.
do know I have friends that consulted for her, and some of them are of the view that she'll stay in like for the really mundane reason that she has nothing better to do. I mean, she doesn't have another job. It's a lot of attention. It's a lot of media. It's a lot of buzz. But at the same time, she's been getting pressured from donors to get out. She's been getting pressured from other Republicans to get out and get in line for the reason you state, because it'd be better just to line up behind the nominee. She'll be heckled. When she goes home to South Carolina, she's going to have Trump calling her bird brain. Trump was not conciliatory at all tonight with regards to Nikki Haley. So, I think that it's kind of a psychological question of like whether she has the gumption to spend a month campaigning for what is probably a hopeless endeavor. And I just think that in the biggest picture, it's just important to point out that like it's insane that we are here. Like this is like Donald Trump has now won an unprecedented victory on the Republican side. It's kind of akin to Al Gore's victory in 2000, but there's never been a Republican primary where somebody won double digit victories in the first two contests in the modern era. And to do that 3 years after January 6th, like to do that in a way where he has almost total acclamation of the party establishment in DC is depressing to me personally, but I just think really notable. And so Nikki's choice comes in like the context of that. Like it's she's running against somebody that both has an unprecedentedly large victory and also unprecedented has like 90 100 court dates ahead of them this
Yeah.
year. So like we're really in uncharted waters. I think it's just a question of whether Nikki has the backbone to kind of steel herself for continuing to run in a relatively hopeless campaign.
Well, I had kind of a different takeaway, and it's a little bit along the same lines that we spoke about last time, and that is that there are kind of harbingers of dangerous things to come for Donald Trump. Like, for example, one of the more concerning, I would imagine, numbers for Trump is that an exit poll here showed 47% of voters believe that a conviction is disqualifying. That's up from 31% in the Iowa caucus. I think it's pretty clear that Donald Trump is going to be convicted on at least one of the 91 criminal charges that he's contending with. So, how big of a blinking red light do you think that number is, that 40% number is for Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think there are red lights, and I think that these observations can live together, right? Like it is unprecedented the degree to which Donald Trump has consolidated the Republican Party in this primary, but it is also extremely abnormal for the people that dissent, the minority that dissents within the party, to be so hostile to the person that's winning, right? And if the comparison is right, like Al Gore and Bill Bradley, it's not like in the New Hampshire primary in 2000. For the old timers, the Bill Bradley supporters were like, "I hate Al Gore and I'd never vote for him." It was like, yeah, it was a family feud. It's like a typical primary. This is something that's a category difference. And if you look at the numbers across the board, that conviction number on the exit poll is one, but just the Nikki Haley voters' views of Donald Trump's claims about the 2020 election, for example, 83% of Nikki Haley voters in New Hampshire today said they believe him to be lying about that. I mean, I just think that shows that the Haley contingent, the Haley coalition is extremely hostile to Trump and very open to Biden. And I do think that is something that the Biden campaign should be optimistic about. And it's something that, we're going to keep talking about. We're going to keep watching. And I don't think it is really going to show up in the polls for another month or two, right? There's just a little lag on this stuff as it sinks in with normie voters who aren't like watching political YouTubes
Yeah.
constantly, right? And so I hope that there's a little lag on that, and I think that cadre of like Haley voters is going to be very gettable for Biden. It's something that we're obviously focused on in our kind of never Trump world over at the Bulwark.
And to that exact point, for anybody watching right now, if you want to hear more from Tim and see what he's up to at the Bulwark, please make sure to subscribe to that YouTube channel. I'll put the link right here on this screen and in the post description of this video. Tim, building on exactly what you were just saying, you know, a lot of Haley's support is based on basically her voters not wanting Donald Trump, and they're not shy about coming out and saying that that is the reason. 40% of her voters were voting for her because they didn't want her opponent. That was part of a CNN exit poll. How big of a problem is it for Donald Trump right now that at a time when he should be expanding his support, like I mean, he lost the 2020 election by small margins. These base voters should be a given. He should be reaching out to, he should be using this time to like expand his support into independents and suburban moms and college educated voters, that instead he seems to be eroding support from within the Republican primary base.
Yeah, and he doesn't seem to be trying that hard, and
Yeah.
about that. And so maybe that'll change at some point, but I don't know if you saw his speech on Monday night in New Hampshire. It was insane. And they were chanting QAnon chants at this speech. Like where we go one, we go all. The
Yeah.
crowd was chanting. He's smiling at them. He's talking about freeing the J6ers. It was a totally wheels off speech aimed at the hardest of the hardcore MAGA voters, like even like kind of casual Donald Trump supporters, like wouldn't even really know what he's talking about. He was so deep into like the expanded MAGA universe talking points, and so I do think that it's a problem for him, and I think that when you look at those Haley voters, you didn't see a lot for Trump that he's offering to them. There's going to be a certain percentage of them. If you look at the numbers, what jumped out as me is Haley only got 25% of the self-identified Republicans tonight, according to the exit polls. It could be off a little bit, but so some percentage of those, maybe call it half, are Republicans and are going to end up voting for Trump, et cetera. But that's still a big percentage, right? Like you're still looking at a very significant number of Republicans, and then not to mention the independents and Democrats that voted for her, that are all going to be very gettable for Biden. Trump has shown no evidence that he's trying to appeal to those voters. And there was a little buzz in the commentary at the pundit class on cable. It was like, well, maybe he's going to pick Haley to his VP to reach out to those voters. Doesn't seem like it. I mean, who knows, right? But like he's insulting her on stage tonight. There's just not. He seems to be like ride or die with his people right now. And I think that he's a little bit high on his own supply of the poll numbers. I think he really thinks that he's winning. And I don't think he recognizes that there is this contingent of voters that really dislikes him, that is not registered that it's Biden Trump yet. That right now in polls are kind of showing up as undecided, but I think are going to break towards Biden as we get closer to November.
Well, yeah, just on the VP thing, I don't think that's going to happen again because, I mean, Trump already tried that with Mike Pence, and that didn't redound to his benefit at the end when he wanted Pence to do his bidding, and Pence wasn't willing to do it. So I think at this point he's definitely going to be more focused on surrounding himself with loyalists and yes men and sycophants than he will be on having someone as his VP who would give voters a permission structure to vote for him, but who may not be loyal enough to do the extrajudicial bidding that he wants them to do. To that point, you did mention Trump's speech on Monday. What about his speech tonight? I know that you had a chance to get to watch it. After Iowa, he had like an uncharacteristically conciliatory tone. Was that the case tonight after New Hampshire?
Not at all. Trump's feeling his oats. Again, a weird speech. It speaks to your VP point. He brings Vivek on stage. Yeah, he brings some other guy who's like a far right guy shouting about the border. He's making fun of Nikki, very, very kind of mean, really, in a mean way. He's attacking Nikki, not kind of in a candidate way, criticizing her about issues, but personally criticizing her. He does the Trump thing where he's like, oh, Nikki has some secrets that she doesn't want you to know about, and kind of floats at just asking questions,
Right.
nonsense accusations about the opponent's character. So that's the Trump we know, right? But I think it speaks to his mindset currently and the strategy and the limits of this strategy, right? You think back to like the great it's such a weird place that we're in. Like you think back to the great New Hampshire primary night speeches, and it's like Obama's losing speech in '08, right? Is the yes we can, si se puede, that takes him into South Carolina, and you go back and think about McCain and Romney, and that Trump is giving this petty, bitter,
He's
uh,
like she's wearing shitty clothes. That's literally
yeah,
one of the points that he hit on the speech.
yeah, and so it's childish, and it was not a guy that seems like he was ready to galvanize support outside of his super online base that like want to troll her because she's a neocon or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think that it's telling, and I think that it's going to be a problem for him. But hopefully, I do worry. And it's something I think we're going to be talking about. I do worry that in the end, Nikki and some of her people end up endorsing him, and they're the ones that give a permission structure to their voters to go for Trump. And I think that's why it's going to be really important for the Biden campaign and for others to be making sure that the Haley voters are staying on side and remember why they hate Donald Trump, because they really hate Donald Trump. It was very clear in the numbers tonight. It was very clear in her speech, listening to the crowd's reaction to her criticisms of him.
Yeah, and by the way, I can't imagine that Donald Trump himself is going to do much to bring them back into the fold. I mean, a lot of people, even when they were doing, I mean, I know this is anecdotal, but when they were doing interviews with these people on newscasts, I mean, a lot of people were just saying like, my parents fought in World War II. Like, I'm here because I want to protect democracy. That's not an issue that as Donald Trump continues to vow to release the January 6th prisoners and that he needs total immunity to act with impunity as president. Like when he continues to make these arguments, he's not going to bring any of those voters into the fold. And so I think that, it's incumbent upon Democrats at the same time to make sure to keep this issue at the forefront. And to your exact point, keep reminding these voters why they're voting against Donald Trump in the first place.
Totally agree. And our focus groups at Bulwark, other places, like these people seem very open to it. But there's a partisan valence sometimes. Sometimes people like go back into their partisan corners,
Totally.
and that's the campaign. That's going to be one of the key segments of this campaign, what it's going to be about. And so hopefully, I mean, the best case scenario is that Nikki eventually does the right thing, but none of these Republicans have really covered himself in glory on that front, and like past performance is the best indicator of future results. So I
Right.
assume that most of these folks, maybe not Chris Christie, but most of the other ones will get on board. But I think a lot of these voters are speaking pretty clearly that they don't want this guy, and they might not be a majority in the Republican Party, but there's certainly a significant enough minority to cost him the election.
Yeah. Well, with that said, for anybody watching right now, obviously this contingent of pro-democracy Republicans is going to be especially important as we head toward 2024. So just to reiterate the point that I made before, if you want to follow along with that contingent of people, Tim and the rest of the folks at the Bulwark are the best people to listen to. So if you're not yet subscribed to the Bulwark, I'll put the link right here on the screen as well as the post description of this video. Go ahead and give them a subscribe. With that said, I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Tim Miller.
You're watching Inside the Right.
Into the war room to see you, so I had to hack my way onto this frequency.
This better be critical, Wheelie.
So, come on, when is it not, please? Okay, couple of things. I'm running low on the dough. I was thinking about taking a couple of months sick leave, maybe starting today. And, oh yeah, I intercepted a transmission from Megatron.
Then send it through.
Yes, sir, right away, sir. And so I was so damn caught on the other stuff.
This is your last warning, insects. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So who's the insect? You? What?
The
Who's the
Autobots
insect?
cannot protect you. They were defeated on our
way.
world, and we will defeat them here.
The Megatron.
This was just a diversion!
Security, please bring up. Rabbit, she's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
Evac, sir.
Right, evac.
She's right in front.
We're facing a heavy sustained attack. They appear to be after the Allspark.
General! General! We need this immediately. Evacuate everything. National security advisor. Stay down. Check it out. Failed the mission celebrations. The amateurs for a suicide mission.
So I had to hack Okay.